Hi, my name's John. I'm a Canadian senior sharing and reflecting from my solo travel adventures here on my Gathering No Moss YouTube channel. In this video, I'm taking a look at how travel accommodation is changing in 2025, especially short-term rentals like Airbnb. Prices are climbing, rules are tightening, and communities are starting to push back. I'll talk about what's behind these shifts and what I look for now when I'm booking a place to stay. Over the past few years, I've stayed in quite a few Airbnb rentals, from beachside condos in Kenya to studio apartments in Lisbon to quiet getaways on Vancouver Island in Canada. Most of them have been clean and comfortable and well located, and I've been a long-time fan. But lately, I've noticed that something is shifting, and it's not just me. A couple of my subscribers have commented saying, "Hey, have you noticed how Airbnb accommodation has gotten more expensive? It doesn't seem to be the bargain that it once was." If I look back at the last 10 Airbnb units that I rented, the average price was between $100 and $120 Canadian per night. And honestly, that felt like a pretty good deal. For example, last year in Malindi, Kenya, a friend and I stayed right on the Indian Ocean. 2 bedrooms, a pool, kitchen, strong Wi-Fi for $100 a night. So that's about $75 US total, or $37 each per night. In Lisbon in the spring of 2024, I had a wonderful solo studio across the street from a metro station for around $100 Canadian. Spotless, well located, and quiet. I felt like I could have stayed there forever. On Vancouver Island this spring, I rented a couple of comfortable places, again averaging about $105 a night. So overall, I felt that I really got good value. But when I've looked at these same places lately, some of them are no longer available for short stays. They require 6 nights, 14 nights, or even a full 30-day minimum booking. It is kind of hard to compare prices then and now accurately because pricing does fluctuate more with the season and local demand. But I know that the rental costs are creeping up, often 10 to 20% or more. Now, some of that is inflation, but there's more to it than that. Many communities, especially in cities like Barcelona, Montreal, or even small European towns, are starting to push back against the flood of short term rentals and over tourism. Why? Well, because long term housing gets converted into short term Airbnb units. Locals often get priced out. Neighborhoods lose their sense of continuity. It's hard to build a community when the people next door change every 3 nights. And let's face it, if you live on a charming cobblestone street, the constant rattle of roller suitcases at 11 p.m. gets old pretty fast. Some cities have started introducing restrictions. For example, you may need a license to rent out a short term unit. You can only rent your primary residence. Minimum stays of 6 nights or even 30 nights are required. There are caps on the number of short term rental units in a building or in a neighborhood. In December of 2024, the Canadian federal government announced a $50 million short term rental enforcement fund to help municipalities enforce short term rental regulations, covering permits, licensing, complaints, and inspections, with the goal of ensuring that these rentals don't contribute to Canada's housing crisis. In Milan and Florence, Italy, protesters placed stickers on key safe boxes used for short term rentals with slogans like, "This city is not a hotel," and "Less short term lets, more houses for all." In June 2025, New York City cracked down, warning over 500 registered short term rental hosts and threatening to revoke licenses for violations such as renting entire apartments for under 30 days or hosting more than 2 guests. Fines can reach $5,000. Now, I suspect that these kinds of rules are exactly why some of the listings I used to stay in are no longer available for 2 or 3 nights. They may now be subjected to city regulations. And you know what? I can kind of respect that. Communities have the right to protect their housing stock and their way of life. And tourists like me who want to visit, learn, and enjoy, well, we also have a responsibility to be good guests. On the other hand, short term rentals can bring extra income to local property owners, and they do help bring visitors into less touristy corners of a city, supporting cafes and small shops and local services that might otherwise be struggling. But at what cost? The hotelization of residential streets can change a neighborhood. More noise, constant comings and goings, parking challenges, and less of a sense of home. I can see how that might wear thin for people who actually live there. Although I still prefer the space and independence that come with an Airbnb, reflecting on all of this has made me more considerate about how and where I will book. I'll be paying closer attention to local regulations to be sure that the hosts that I choose are operating legitimately and respectfully within their community. I can understand why some neighborhoods want to limit or restrict short term rentals to protect housing for residents and keep their streets from feeling like a hotel corridor. As travelers, we share in that responsibility, and hopefully a little bit of awareness will go a long way. Now let's talk about price because Airbnb isn't always the cheaper option anymore. Hotel prices have gone up too, especially if you want something central, clean, quiet, and with a few amenities. The days of the $60 boutique rooms in the heart of Lisbon or Florence are long gone, unless you're happy with a dorm, which at 78 I'm not particularly drawn to. These days, I usually budget to spend $150 Canadian. That would be about $110 US or less per night. And sometimes I splurge, especially if there's a pool or gym, a phenomenal location, or it's my last night in the country. But I try and balance those four-star lodgings with a few nights in a simpler, more budget conscious place, as long as they're clean and safe and conveniently located. 3 years ago, I had a wonderful little loft apartment beside the sea in Ortigia, Sicily, for about $60 Canadian per night. When I looked again recently while preparing this video, that unit was gone. And similar accommodation in the same area at the same time of year is now 2 to 3 times that price. One thing to now keep in mind when looking at rates is that Airbnb used to show low nightly prices, but then when you book, they added cleaning fees, service fees, and taxes. Now, the price that you see includes all of that. So, although it looks higher up front, it's more transparent. Personally, I welcome that change. At least you can see what you'll actually pay before you check out instead of being surprised by another $30 added at the end. Booking.com, by contrast, can still be a little bit misleading. The price you see isn't always the final total, so it pays to look closely. Now, I tend to prefer having my own space, a small apartment with a kitchenette, a bit of a living room, and a place to spread out. Every so often, a friend joins me for a few days, so a two-bedroom unit becomes ideal. It's flexible, and when shared, it saves on accommodation expenses for both of us. I don't usually book single rooms in someone's home. I've done it, but I always feel like I'm intruding a bit. My experience with bed and breakfasts a few years back was like that too. A room in someone's house, often with breakfast in the family kitchen. It's lovely in theory, but I prefer a little independence and privacy. So, where does this leave us? The world of accommodation is in flux. Prices are rising. Regulations are tightening. Options are more varied than ever, but also a bit more confusing. As a senior solo traveler, I now compare across platforms: Airbnb, Booking.com, and local hotel sites. I check cancellation policies, fees, cleaning rules, and minimum stay requirements. I still like Airbnb, especially when I can find a well located, self contained flat at a reasonable price. But I'm also aware more now of how those rentals affect the communities that I visit. And honestly, the feeling that I might not be entirely welcome in a neighborhood sometimes makes me pause. So, yes, I will continue to use Airbnb thoughtfully. I try to be a good guest, respect the neighborhood, and leave no trace except for a few kind words in the guest book. And I'll make sure that I'm aware of local rules before I book. I'm also adjusting my expectations. Although I've always got my eye out for a suitable bargain, these days I anticipate having to pay between $100 and $130 Canadian per night for comfortable Airbnb accommodation. Anything less is usually just a single room in a house or a bed in a four-bed dorm. And there aren't many places left where that will get you any more than a three-star hotel, if that. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What's been your experience with Airbnb or hotel bookings in the last couple of years? Have you noticed a price jump? Are there things you're not willing to compromise on? What helps you feel at home even when you're far away? Let me know in the comments. I really do read them, and your insights help shape how I travel too. Thanks for watching. If you're curious about seniors solo travel, the highs, the challenges, the joys, please subscribe. This channel isn't about going viral. It's about staying curious, staying connected, and staying on the move. Gathering no moss. Safe travels. See you next time.